the world. So there's an endless way to grow. We're here to improve the shopping experience. Imagine that you walk in the store, you grab our cart and you log in with your profile, and we can customize the shopping journey for your needs. So if you're allergic to anything, if you're on a specific diet, we can really help you maintain a healthy shopping journey according to your preferences.
I'm Patrick Ottman in Havana, Cuba, and this is CNN. I'm Becky Anderson. It's 6 p.m. in Dubai. A very warm welcome to the show. We begin with what appears to be major developments following the latest round of Russia-Ukraine ceasefire talks. Now, Russia's defense ministry announcing its troops will, quote, drastically reduce military activity around Kyiv and Chernihiv. U.S. officials calling this a major strategy shift by Russia to focus on gains in southern and eastern Ukraine. And they warn that Russia could cover the retreat of Kyiv with air and artillery bombardment. Well, Ukrainian negotiators voicing signs of progress as they emerged from today's talks in Istanbul, laying out a complex path forward that involves security guarantees and delaying any final resolution on the status of Crimea, annexed by Russia in 2014 for 15 years. The head of Russia's delegation calling the talks constructive. An advisor for Ukraine's president saying there's now a chance Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin could meet in person. Well, those talks happening as more Russian missiles and bombs hit targets in Ukraine. Russian fire demolished half of a government building in the southwestern city of Mykolaiv, killing at least 9 people and injuring more than 20. A regional military governor there saying as many as 100 people did manage to walk out of that building. And there's no let-up to the suffering in the besieged port city of Mariupol. This video showing the massive destruction there. The mayor now calling for a complete evacuation. Ukraine's president says for the people who remain in Mariupol, there is no way out.
The road out of Mariupol blocked by is blocked by the Russian army, and more than 100,000 people are remaining there. They have to melt snow to get water. All this time, we have had no way of delivering humanitarian supplies. Water, food, medications, everything is blocked by the Russian troops. More than 90% of all Mariupol buildings have been completely destroyed.
Well, CNN's Phil Black joining me now live from Lviv in Ukraine. And it's a day of split stories, really, isn't it? As we hear from President Zelensky and hear from the mayor of Mariupol on these scenes there in a city which is suffering so badly. So we also have what some at least are describing as a major strategy shift by the Russians in their assault on Ukraine as a whole. Do we have any sense of what Russia's strategy, its plans are at this point?
Well, if Russia is to be believed, Becky, it is altering its behavior on the battlefield, not just altering, but reducing its activity, reducing its attacking power around some key locations, notably the capital Kyiv and the northern city of Chernihiv, as a direct result of progress that is being made in the talks in Istanbul. A slightly more cynical view says that these are two locations where Russia was already struggling, where Russia has made little progress at all recently, has only been able to apply power or apply pressure, I should say, through shelling and indirect fire, often on residential areas, and where, in fact, particularly around the capital Kyiv, Russia is already being pushed back. But these are not the circumstances the Russian military cites in talking about its decision to pull back some units from these areas. Instead, it says that it is trying to create an atmosphere that would allow the progress that has been made, the proposals that have been put forward, to develop and evolve and to continue to the point of becoming some sort of larger, more ambitious peace deal that could be signed by all the parties. They specifically reference Ukraine's proposals to adopt neutral status in return for international security guarantees, an international treaty signed on by a number of parties that would guarantee coming to the aid of Ukraine if its security were to be threatened in the future. That's the proposal that they are citing specifically. There is a lot of other detail and a lot of other sticking points still to be discussed and worked out, but Russia's openness to discussing this particular point suggests that there is perhaps room for further progress, Becky.
Yeah, absolutely. Phil, thank you for that. So Phil Black is on the ground for you in Lviv. Well, the presidents of the Baltic countries have been discussing the importance of NATO in the wake of Russia's war on Ukraine. It comes on the 18th anniversary of their joining the alliance. My next guest, Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, has been speaking about ways to counter Russian President Vladimir Putin. In an opinion piece in the New York Times, Ms. Kallas says, quote, "Mr. Putin cannot win this war. He cannot even think he's won, or his appetite will grow." Prime Minister Kallas joining me now live from the Estonian capital of Tallinn. I do want to start with getting your sense of what we are hearing out of the completion of these talks, day one at least, in Istanbul. Some sense of progress. What are you hearing?
Well, first of all, we must not forget that these talks are going on because Russia invaded Ukraine and wants to erase Ukraine as a sovereign country. And now the talks are going on, and of course President Zelensky is in a very difficult position because on one hand he sees all the destruction that Russia is causing, all the civilians being killed, but and on the other hand there's this pressure to achieve peace, but he doesn't want to give away his territory, so it's a very, very difficult position. And of course, Russia is struggling, like the previous reporter said, struggling in places in around Kiev, for example. So they are stepping back, but we have to keep in mind that there is still a vast territory that is occupied already with the Russian troops, by the Russian troops. So you know, whatever agreement there is, it is made at gunpoint because the civilians of Ukraine are being killed.
Yeah, it has to be constructive, and I hear what you're saying. It has to be constructive, though, doesn't it, if Ukrainian negotiators are voicing signs of progress as they emerge from today's talks. An advisor for Ukraine's president saying that there is now a chance that Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin could meet in person. Again, your sense, your response to hearing that?
I understand that Ukrainian president wants to do everything that is in his power to stop this war and also stop the killing of civilians and the destruction of the cities of Ukraine. And he's in a very difficult position. So of course it is good if two of them meet. So far, President Putin hasn't been or has not agreed to meet Zelensky, as he doesn't consider Ukraine to be a separate country. So he tries to negotiate with bigger players in the world arena. But nobody can make the agreements for Ukraine. And even if Ukraine makes some kind of peace agreement, we must not forget and forgive to Putin, who has committed really war crimes in Ukraine, because why there are more civilian casualties than military casualties in this war is because he's targeting civilians. And it is a war crime in accordance with the international law. And so even even if they achieve some kind of agreement on peace, then we have to keep in mind that Putin, we don't go back to business as usual with Putin.
Yeah, and let's be quite clear. You know, on the one hand, we are hearing some optimism out of these talks between negotiators in Turkey. On the other, Russia's assault on the people of Ukraine does continue, and we've been reporting on the situation, the dire situation, for example, in Mariupol. You say Vladimir Putin's appetite increases with each bite of Ukraine, and there are concerns about his intentions farther afield for Estonia, the other Baltic states. What are the most effective ways to weaken an adversarial Russia, to your mind, at present?
Well, first of all, I want to stress that we are part of NATO. As you said, 18 years ago, we joined NATO, and there hasn't been any attack on any NATO country ever. So if you think about the West Berlin during the Cold War, in a military terms, it would have been very easy to conquer. But why it wasn't? Because it would have been attack on NATO, and that is something that Russia is afraid of. So in Estonia, we don't feel or see any military threat towards us. So this is the first point. But his appetite will grow if we forgive him and let him do what he does. We saw in 2008, in 2014, there was also this attitude that, okay, let him not move on, let's have a peace agreement. But as there was no punishment due to the everything that he did or the aggression that he was going through, then his appetite grew, and 2 years or some years afterwards, he just did this again, and we must really avoid this mistake again.
Right now, Estonia hosting NATO troops. You advocate for NATO to increase its military strength in its eastern or on its eastern flank. I just wonder whether you can explain what that might look like and how you believe there is the opportunity to continue this unity that we are seeing amongst allies at present. Do you have any concerns that we might begin to see some fractures when it seems from the conversation I'm having with you that you see a Russia under Vladimir Putin as a threat and a continued threat, a future threat?
Yes, I do see that, and I also see the unity of the allies, and it has been really kept. We are strong together, and we should remain so in NATO. What I mean by increasing the defense of our region is that right now we have the air policing mission. It should go into air defense. And all this enhanced forward presence should go into forward defense. What it really means is it means that the battalions are here ready for combat as well. And why NATO acts as a deterrent to Russia. If the situation in Russia changes so that they are making these aggressive moves on neighboring countries, then the deterrence should also be increased by increasing the defense here, so that he doesn't get any ideas or any wishes towards any NATO country. So that the deterrence works. So in order to have peace, you have to prepare for war.
Prime Minister, it's good to have you on. Thank you. Let's get you to Istanbul now, and I want to bring in Alma Damon, where what could be very consequential peace talks have just wrapped up an hour or so ago. Our Turkey's foreign minister, at least calling this the most meaningful progress yet in ending this nearly 5-week-old war. Just to explain what we understand to have been agreed today and why it is significant?
Well, Becky, let's preface this by saying that the bar for meaningful progress when it comes to negotiations between these two countries is quite low. That being said, it is better than no progress at all. It does seem at this stage as if the Ukrainian side has made a number of what are being described as fairly concrete proposals that now the Russians have taken back to their end and will be negotiating upon them. Key among these is, one, the issue of Crimea, annexed by Russia in 2014. And what the Ukrainian side, as far as we understand, seems to be proposing is basically tabling the issue of Crimea for 15 years, during which bilateral talks would be taking place. But that, at the very least, removes it from being one of the hurdles impeding these current negotiations from going forward. You also have another very critical issue for Ukraine, and that is one that doesn't have all that much to do directly with its negotiations with Russia, and that is the security guarantees that Ukraine is looking for. Ukraine has agreed to consider becoming a non-nuclear neutral state, which would effectively, for the foreseeable future, prevent it from becoming a NATO member, something that Russia has been quite adamant about. And in fact, Russia used as justification for its invasion of Ukraine, fearing NATO's encroachment further along its borders. But what Ukraine wants is other nations to be acting as guarantors, and for there to be a sort of security agreement among them that would be similar to the agreement that exists among NATO countries, which would mean that should Ukraine be attacked in the future, these guarantor nations would have an obligation to step in and defend Ukraine. And that, Becky, is going to be very, very tricky, because which country is going to be willing to take on that burden of responsibility right now? So there's still quite a bit to be ironed out, to include the issue of a humanitarian ceasefire. It was discussed, but nothing was agreed upon at this stage. Now, the talks, when it comes to those face-to-face conversations happening in Turkey, they have ended. But as has been the process throughout, online discussions will be continuing at this stage. But suffice to say that if anyone was expecting a sort of quick-ish negotiation, that most certainly is not what we saw taking place.
These talks, of course, happening as more Russian missiles and bombs hit targets in Mariupol, our Russian fire demolishing half of a government building in the southwestern city of Mykolaiv, killing at least 9, injuring more than 20. And we know that the dire situation in Mariupol continues, and as you rightly point out, humanitarian corridor, they're desperately needed, as it is in other parts of the country. Let's just get some perspective from Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, on today's talks. Have a listen.
What I can say is this. There is what Russia says, and there is what Russia does. We're focused on the latter. And what Russia is doing is the continued brutalization of Ukraine and its people.
Action speaks louder than words, I think, would be a fair précis of, or paraphrase of what Antony Blinken has just said. But the US surely must keep the opportunity for off-ramps alive. It would be wrong for Washington to ignore any opportunities to find a solution to this.
Yeah, I most certainly would, just like it would be wrong for any country to try to block any effort to find a solution for this. And then there are many who will look at what's happening in Ukraine and be analyzing the situation and say that, you know, fundamentally at its core, how much of this is really about the country of Ukraine itself, and how much has Ukraine found itself to be stuck in between this sort of proxy battlefield grappling for global supremacy power that exists between Russia and the United States, or Russia and the West. No matter how you look at it, Ukraine most certainly is stuck between these two very formidable powers and does continue to pay the price for it. And so while on the one hand, going back to what we were saying earlier about the negotiations, yes, a significant portion of these negotiations is up to what happens and is negotiated between Russia and Ukraine. But at the same time, the West does play a very significant role in terms of what it is that Ukraine wants to then see from the West, so that it can then feel more stable, more secure. Keeping in mind, too, that there have been, sort of security agreements in the past with Ukraine and the United Kingdom, the United States, Russia, and frankly, some would say Ukraine has felt betrayed.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Our Damon is in Istanbul in Turkey for you today. Coming up, Russian shelling has been targeting the suburbs surrounding Ukraine's capital. We will visit one devastated village just north of Kyiv. Up next. And the scene in Mariupol. One EU country has promised to rebuild parts of this city. We speak to Greece's investment minister. Up next.
My name is Vicky Chemtai. I'm a trade economist with the Trade and Regional Integration Unit of the World Bank. If we're to look at shipping as a country, it would be the 6th largest emitter of global emissions. So that's crazy massive. Restrictions on trading in environmental goods and services are standing in the way of making trade sustainable. You have less tariffs on dirty sectors, high tariffs on clean sectors. So what are the first steps that a country can take to make trade more sustainable? Definitely to reduce the tariffs and allowing a free flow of these low carbon technologies. Governments need to create this environment that enables innovation to thrive. This is critically important for the low carbon transition. There is absolutely no time to wait.
Ukraine now claims some Russian troops are withdrawing from battlefronts in the capital. Earlier, CNN was able to get a first-hand look at some of the devastation caused by the brutal attacks as Russian shelling was intensifying. I do want to warn you, some of the images you are about to see are graphic. CNN's Fred Pleitkin travelled to one village north of the capital.
Kyiv remains under full-on attack by Vladimir Putin's army. Ukrainian officials saying Russian forces are trying to storm the capital, but failing, unleashing artillery barrages on civilian areas in the process. We drove to the village Novi Petrivtse, north of Kyiv, only a few miles from the front line. Even the streets here are pockmarked with shrapnel and massive impact craters. Whole buildings laid to waste. I mean, just look at the utter destruction caused by this massive explosion. There's some really thick brick walls, and even they were annihilated by the force of whatever landed here. The people here tell us they only felt one really large explosion, and it wounded several people and killed a small child. That child was 2-year-old Stepan, killed while in his bed when the house came under fire. These videos, given to us by local authorities, show the chaos in the aftermath. As the wounded appear in shock, residents and rescuers try to save those who were inside. Stepan pronounced dead on the scene. Stepan was Oleg Shpak's second youngest child. We found Oleg sifting through the rubble of his house days later. Inside, he shows me the damage caused by the explosion. He was at work when his home was hit. His wife, the other children, and his mother-in-law had already been brought to the hospital when he arrived at the house. Stepan couldn't be saved, and because of staff shortages at the morgue, Oleg had to prepare his son's body for burial himself.
I had to wash him, to dress him, his head from his right ear to his left ear, one large hematoma, his arms, his legs, a total hematoma not compatible with life. And besides that, lots of other wounds were discovered after death.
Many other houses have also been hit here. The police tell me the Russians shell the town every day. We bumped into 84-year-old Halina in the town center. She was a child when the Nazis invaded this area and says now things are worse.
Worse than fascists. When the Germans were here and entered our homes, they would shoot at the ceiling, but they would not touch us. They moved us into the woods, but they did not shoot us like the Russian soldiers are shooting now, killing children.
The Kremlin claims its forces don't target civilian areas, but the US, NATO, and the Ukrainians say the Russians are frustrated by their lack of progress and are firing longer-range weapons because they can't make headway on the ground.
They understand that sooner or later our troops will push them out of our territory. Now the Russians are doing dirty tricks. They shoot more at civilian areas than at the positions of the Ukrainian army.
Ukraine's army says it's pressing its own counteroffensive, trying to dislodge Russian troops from the outskirts of Kiev. The Kremlin's forces, meanwhile, so far unable to take the Ukrainian capital, are instead laying waste to its suburbs. Fred Pleitgen, CNN, Novi Petrivce, Ukraine.
4,000, sorry, let me give you that to you again. 400,000 people lived in Mariupol before this war. Many of them were ethnic Greeks. The city has historic trade links with Greece, and the Prime Minister has acknowledged this connection, saying Mariupol is the center of the Greek minority in Ukraine, a city dear to our hearts. Well, I spoke with the Minister of Development and Investment when he was here at the Dubai Expo and asked him what his country is doing for those Greeks left behind in the southern port city.
To send a very clear message to all the Greeks origin people in Mariupol, that all the Greek people is with them, we care about them, and we think of them every day. The Greek government almost finished the evacuation of all the Greek citizens of this area, and we managed with the Nostos plan to evacuate as much more ethnic Greeks we could at that time. But unfortunately, a lot of them are still there and suffering a lot.
What's their future?
If there's going to be a peace soon, we will go there and help them to reconstruct their life in their city. If the war continues, nobody knows.
Are they welcome in Greece?
Of course, they're very welcome in Greece, and I can tell that all Ukrainian refugees are welcome in Greece. We want to show our solidarity with these people, and we want to tell them that all the Greek people support their struggle for freedom.
Greece's Consul General in Mariupol, the last EU diplomat to evacuate the besieged Ukrainian port, said, and I quote here, "What I saw, I hope no one will ever see." Greece has offered to rebuild the bombed maternity clinic there. Just explain what you understand to be the severity of that attack and why Greece is taking this initiative. What kind of coordination do you believe will be needed at this point to rebuild?
First of all, I have to make a comment about our Secretary Consul there. He's a hero for the Greek people. You know, he stayed even with a risk of his own life in order to save people and help them evacuate this place. And this is important to us. The attack was a disgrace for human civilization. Innocent people and children died, no soldiers inside, just innocent common people. I think this was the most ugly phase of the war, and our Prime Minister committed that we will rebuild it.
Are you convinced that the involvement in the war is completely backed by the Greek people? After all, Greek public opinion towards the government's involvement has been largely split.
In Greece, there was a traditionally big friendship to Russia. And I have to say, we have nothing against the Russian people. And we hope that Russia will find its way out, because the Russian people is suffering also from this war. But all this friendship with Russia, I think now is declining, because the people shows all these victims every day, and they realize that innocent people are dying.
And that was the Greek minister speaking to me about the intentions of Greece to help rebuild that Mariupol maternity hospital. Ukraine may only be keeping up this fight with the help of billions of dollars in military aid from the US and NATO. Ahead, how America is fulfilling Ukraine's requests while keeping its own stockpile full.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels. Connected to your world.
This is the result of one single blast.
3.3 million Ukrainians have now fled this country.
You don't have to go far to find a family who has been displaced.
We just heard an air raid siren ring out.
We run down to cover. It is hard to imagine life returning here.
In Kiev, Dnipro,
Poland.
This is CNN.
I'm Fred Pleitgen in Kiev, Ukraine, and this is CNN.
Well, Russia announcing what appears to be a big decision in its war on Ukraine. It says it will, quote, drastically reduce its military assaults on the capital, Kyiv, and the northern city of Chernihiv. Some US officials are calling this a major strategy shift by Moscow. Well, the move, reported by Russian state media, follows face-to-face talks between Ukrainian and Russian delegations in Turkey a short time ago. Now we are hearing a meeting between the Ukrainian and Russian presidents may be possible. Well, the Kremlin has also been talking to the media about its nuclear weapons, saying it would only use them against a threat to Russia's existence. Well, all of this means French President Emmanuel Macron and Russian leader Vladimir Putin will have a lot to discuss when they touch base in another phone call. That's expected to happen this half hour. Of course, we'll be listening for any news coming out of the readout from that conversation. Well, US defense officials, meantime, say they plan to step up production of the missiles being sent to Ukraine. They are trying to refill their own stockpile as they fulfill the Ukrainian military's wish list, including 500 Stinger missiles and 500 Javelin anti-tank missiles a day. CNN's Barbara Starr joins us live from the Pentagon. I wonder if you can just put that in context. We're talking about 1,000 anti-aircraft and anti-tank missiles a day. How many is that compared to what, for example, NATO members have already sent to Ukraine?
Becky, that's the Ukraine wish list. There is nothing to say at this point that is going to be what is sent. Referring back to our previous reporting at CNN, We have reported that thousands, hundreds of these types of missiles have already been sent to Ukraine by the U.S. and the NATO allies. But what's going on in the U.S. right now at the Defense Department is they're trying to increase production and reduce production time of both the Stinger anti-air missile and the Javelin anti-tank missile, the true critical weapon systems that Ukraine needs and that are being shipped to it. So why are they doing this? This is because as you ship out of U.S. inventories, you have to replenish and maintain a basic minimum level for the U.S. military. So what they're looking at is how they can make production in the U.S. more efficient, put more workers on the line, get rid of obsolete parts, get new factory tooling. You know, it all sounds very industrial, and in fact it is, and it's exactly what they say is needed to try and perform that critical task, getting more missiles produced, getting U.S. stocks replenished, and getting shipped out the door, therefore, to Ukraine, the inventory that they already have on hand. Becky?
Barbara Starr is reporting for you from the Pentagon. Barbara, always a pleasure. Thank you. Up next, for the first time in months, Britain's Queen Elizabeth II steps out in public at an event to honour her late husband, a husband of 7 decades. Details on the service for Prince Philip is coming up. And a week after a stunning upset, North Macedonia is looking for another. A look at the final round of European World Cup qualifying. That's in just a moment.
When a watch does things beyond simply telling the time, we call those functions complications. And when we talk about watches with complications, we have to talk about Patek Philippe, the most prestigious of prestigious Swiss watch brands. And a classic example of what Patek Philippe can do is the perpetual calendar chronograph. Now, our perpetual calendar mechanically keeps track of days, months, and dates. It also lets you know if it's day or night. It keeps track of moon phases, and it lets you know when it's a leap year. Now that's a lot for a mechanical watch to do. When we talk about the Patek Philippe Perpetual Calendar, we're talking about one of the great watches. This is a major feat of watchmaking.
Mainland China tolerates no signs of dissent whatsoever.
Are you anticipating dozens of people being prosecuted? Hundreds? Thousands?
Stories of mass internment camps have been trickling out.
Do you think you'll see your husband again?
This period of mourning is taking place in a real climate of fear. The humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in front of our eyes here.
This is one of the cells? Come on in here.
We're flying over ISIS front lines. This is the only protection we have. The nerves are still very much on edge. Firefighters have been battling this blaze for weeks.
What do you say to people who question climate change?
We need to do something now.
Ivan Watson, CNN.
Right, let's get you up to speed on some of the other stories aside from Ukraine that are on our radar right now. And oil prices have fallen sharply. This is after Russia indicated its plans to dial back its assault on parts of Ukraine. That's easing energy supply fears, which sent crude prices soaring earlier this month. Well, Shanghai city officials clamping down even more as they enforce a 2-phase COVID lockdown to get everybody tested. 6 million people living in Pudong district are now no longer allowed to leave their homes except to get that mandatory COVID test. Before, they were restricted to their residential compounds. British police say they will issue 20 fines as part of their investigation into the Partygate scandal involving Boris Johnson's government. It's the first official confirmation that illegal events were held at Downing Street in Whitehall at the height of the pandemic. Spokesman for the UK Prime Minister says Mr Johnson has so far not been issued with a fine himself. Well, Britain's Queen Elizabeth II makes her first public appearance in months to pay tribute to her late husband of 73 years. Earlier today, members of the royal family and world dignitaries attended a Thanksgiving service honouring the Duke of Edinburgh. Prince Philip, as he was also known, passed away just last April, just 2 months before his 100th birthday. The 95-year-old monarch has not attended a public event since falling ill late last year from an unspecified ailment. Well, let's bring in CNN's Nina Dos Santos live at 10 Downing Street. We haven't seen the Queen in public, Nina, for months. Clearly, for anybody who was married to somebody for 73 years, a lifelong partner, of course, as was Prince Philip to the Queen, this must have been an emotional event for her.
It must have been terribly emotional, and it was also an opportunity to have that big funeral that her late husband had taken such detail to plan over the years, finally, because of course they couldn't have that this time last year because the lockdown restrictions meant that only 30 people could attend his funeral. So this was an event that had 1,800 people. Many representatives of the Duke's charities and beloved causes were lining the entranceway to Westminster Abbey as the Queen walked past, but she was also flanked by 4 generations of her own family. You remember the poignant images of the monarch this time last year having to sit on her own, observing those lockdown restrictions that some other people in the country here in Downing Street are accused of not doing so at that time. Becky, and now finally she was able to sit with her own children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren as well. So this was an important moment for her, but the ceremony had to be tailored to her age. It was kept down to 45 minutes because, of course, we know the Queen is quite elderly at this time, and she's also recently been struggling with some mobility issues. It was also a chance to see other members of the royal family who've been in the headlines. I'm notably thinking about the Duke of York. This was the first time that we've seen him since his legal troubles were settled in the United States. He actually had the important role of accompanying his mother all the way from Windsor Castle to Westminster Abbey for this important service to give thanks to the life of his late father. Becky?
A significant role for the Duke of York today. You suggested that there were others who were less keen to stick to the rules, as it were, during the pandemic, not least those in the building behind you. Let's turn to Partygate scandal. London police say they will issue 20 fines. So far, the Prime Minister hasn't received one. Is there any indication the Prime Minister is amongst those who will be fined?
We don't know, because we don't know the list of individuals. The Metropolitan Police has made it clear that even those who said there are 20 fines expected here that are being issued, they haven't said and say that they will not say who they're going to be issuing them to, and also which events those fines were related to, because remember that there were a number of allegations of various different lockdown busting parties taking place here inside Downing Street during the times of those lockdowns that the country was going through, including allegedly at a time when obviously the Queen was marking the loss of her beloved husband of 73 years. But remember, this isn't over though, Becky. We are still expecting the investigation to continue. It's going to be picking up pace, and once that Metropolitan Police investigation is over, that'll give Sue Gray, the civil servant in charge of looking into this, full licence to publish her report in full. And then the Prime Minister will also have to explain to Parliament exactly its contents. Becky?
Nina Dos Santos is outside, number 10 Downing Street. Thank you. Well, 2 of the final spots in the 2022 World Cup will be determined Tuesday. Can, North Macedonia do it again? They stunned the football. I love these stories. They stunned the football world last week when they booted Italy out of the competition. You heard me right. CNN World Sport anchor Alex Thomas is here with more. Talk about the giant killers. I mean, this is a wonderful run.
And David has to pull off another Goliath giant killing if they're to get past Portugal later on Tuesday, Becky. And of course, Cristiano Ronaldo desperate to get to what could be his last World Cup, although he had something to say about that. And we'll tell you what shortly.
Oh, you tease us. That's World Sport. Up after this break. with Alex Thomas. I'm back after that. Stay with us.
If I have the opportunity to leave the world in a little bit better place than when I got here, then I'm kind of participating in that. So I think it's important. We're being the largest jewelry company out there in volume terms. We have a big role to play and show the way in the industry, and that's what we're doing. So it's not just the right thing to do, that's an important motivator personally, but it's also future-proofing our business, because I do think that at one point consumers will take note whether you're a socially responsible company. We can already see, of course, NGOs are pushing this agenda, but I can also see that the financial community is now starting to raise the bar and require companies that they invest in to have a proper attempt to do some work in the sustainability area.
Hello, welcome to CNN World Sport. I'm Alex Thomas in London. Cristiano Ronaldo says Portugal's World Cup playoff showdown later on Tuesday is a matter of life and death. They're up against North Macedonia, who knocked out European champions Italy in the previous round. And this is a winner-takes-all game for a place at Qatar 2022. Ronaldo not even trying to play down the importance of this game, urging the home fans in Porto to create an intimidating atmosphere. Let's get the view of football expert Pedro Pinto, former World Sport anchor, of course, still a broadcaster, as well as a PR and digital communications consultant. He works closely with the Portugal national team as well. So, Pedro, for all your professionalism, this will surely be a night that keeps you and all those Portugal fans on the edge of your seats.
Alex, you know me well enough to know that it'll be difficult for me to stay calm during this game, especially after the roller coaster ride that this side has given all of its fans during the World Cup qualifying process. Of course, there was the disappointment of losing to Serbia at home in the last match in the group stage. Then there was the tumultuous game against Turkey in the semi-finals of the playoff, where after taking a 2-0 lead, they looked like they were cruising to the final before conceding a goal and a penalty, which put everyone on edge at the Dragão Stadium in Portugal. So there's a lot of nervous anxiety in the air regarding the possibility of missing out on the World Cup. But there's also an air of confidence, I would say, that after beating Turkey, after getting that win under their belts following the disappointment against Serbia, the team is feeling and looking good heading into this match against the underdogs of North Macedonia.
You know, and their star man, Cristiano Ronaldo, didn't shy from the spotlight, put himself forward at that pre-match presser in pretty strident mood. Let's just show our viewers what he said when asked if this was his last shot at a World Cup.
I'm starting to see that a lot of you ask me the same question. I'm the one who will decide my future, nobody else. If I want to keep playing, I will play. If I want to stop, I won't play. I'm the one who's in charge. That's it.
Pedro, it feels like deja vu. 4 years ago, we were discussing if Russia was going to be his last World Cup. He's still playing as well as ever in places. How crucial is he to this Portugal team, even if to do nothing more than take the pressure on himself so that it's not on his teammates?
Look, he is crucial, whatever way you look at it. You know, they say numbers don't lie, and his numbers are incredible. He's the top goal-scoring human on the planet. He's got 115 goals for his country. He has asked the organizers at the stadium in Porto to stop the music during the anthem, so you can just hear all the supporters singing a cappella. He knows how important this is, not only just for him, but for Portugal to qualify. Portugal have qualified for every World Cup since he has been playing. The last one they didn't get to participate in was 1998. So Cristiano is now more of a pure number 9 than he is the winger that burst onto the scene over 20 years ago. He is 37 years old, so it's normal that people are asking the question, how long will you be around? I think he doesn't have a problem saying that this is probably his last World Cup. I think the issue he has is that people ask him, when are you going to retire? And he says, it's my decision. I get to pick. I know how well my body's doing, and we also know how well he treats his body. So he could be going for a few other seasons. Regarding World Cups, it probably will be his last. His next one, he'll be 41 years old. So I think it's a little bit too much to ask, even for someone who's as superhuman as Cristiano.
Just don't tell him that, as we found out from that press conference. Listen, what about the threat they face? You know, Portugal are confident, but North Macedonia, can they pull off a second giant killing? They're going to have to come to the end of the road at some stage.
Alex, it's a fantastic Cinderella story. It proves once again that no team should be disrespected when it comes to qualifying for any tournament at any level. They beat Germany away a year ago in the group stage. They beat Italy away on the way to making this playoff final. So Portugal know that they can't take them for granted, and they need to put in their best performance. They know if they do that, that they've got huge chances to win. Most of the team that'll line up tonight won the Euro in 2016 in France. So they know what it takes to win a trophy. They know what it takes to produce when it matters most. So they are confident, but they cannot underestimate North Macedonia, who have already done so much to reach this phase, and they'll be dreaming of another memorable night in European football. For Portugal's sake, let's hope that doesn't happen. But for their sake, obviously, may the best team win.
We'll let you fly the flag on this occasion, my friend. As always, you've whetted our appetite for that. Thanks for your expert insight. Now, there are 5 more World Cup qualifiers in the African region later, including a rerun of the Africa Cup of Nations final between Senegal and Egypt. But no Ivory Coast, they're already out, robbing fans of the chance to see prolific Ajax forward Sébastien Haller. He's been speaking to our senior sports analyst, Darren Lewis, about the influence of Erik ten Hag, his club manager, who could be moving to Manchester United.
Just talk to us about how much Erik ten Hag is responsible for your outstanding form.
A lot. He's responsible a lot for my coming in Ajax, because of course I know him well. I know what he is able to do and how he wanted to use me as well. So for me it was a lot of safety, let's say, because I know how he wants to play. I know how good he is technically, and he will never let his player just do what they want. You know, he always have good view on the opponent, so he gives us the keys to succeed during the game.
Now, I know there's a lot of excitement, you'll know too, over ten Hag with Manchester United very interested in him. Are the players trying to persuade him to stay, or do they, like you, understand the pull of the Premier League?
No, of course. I think we all understand. I think it's the choice from the trainer, the choice from the coach to choose what he wants. We are just his players. No, I'm just grateful for what he did to me. And I just hope that he will take the best decision for himself, you know. So I have nothing to say because I don't even know everything inside Manchester United. So and the way they really want him. So I can just say that he needs to follow his heart, his brain, and take the right decision.
Okay, well, let's just talk about how good he is, because as you say, he's been outstanding for you. How good is he as a man manager as well as tactically?
He's someone that, let's say, is clever, and he knows his strength, but also his weaknesses. So I think he's trying to become better every day. So of course he's trying to be there for the players, you know, to don't let anything, away, because he's trying to keep everyone involved in the team. But Yeah, I want to say that every dressing room is different, every team is different, so you need to act a bit differently, depends the dressing room you have. So maybe his quality today can be a weakness somewhere else. So yeah, let's see how we do.
Sebastien Haller speaking to Darren Lewis. We've still got time here on World Sport to hear from the young American tennis player who pulled off a shock in California last week. Taylor Fritz is going to tell us how he ended Rafa Nadal's perfect start to the season.